Here's something nobody wants to hear about, at least not investors. Ubisoft is in a huge slump, and I don't see it turning around anytime soon. In fact, I think what we're seeing is a lot of fan criticism for almost anything they're producing now. Let's talk about it on That Game Place. Hi, friends, it's me, CC, here once again with my pal Nolan. Nolan, how was your trip?
It was great, except for Tiana's Bayou Adventure. That kind of sucked. But everything else was great. I got to see a preview for Super Nintendo World in Orlando. That was awesome, and I'm hyped for that.
Well, that's good news, and I can't wait to be there. And I know for a fact we're all going to hang out together in Florida and do that one time just for all of you. But let's move on because we've got a story to cover, and I think it's going to be rather, well, troubling for people who have money invested in Ubisoft. As you can see here, coming from PC Gamer, Andy Chalk wrote this one, says Ubisoft's slump, Star Wars Outlaw fails to turn things around, and XDefiant's numbers are sliding. And we still don't know where the sands of time is, and that's just the beginning of this story. Let me tell you, they've got Assassin's Creed Shadows coming, and it just isn't getting better. But according to the sub-headline here, it says, despite hopes for its open-world Star Wars game, Ubisoft's share price is now sitting at a 10-year low. And I've been taking a look at this over time. I think you guys have seen it here on our live shows. But the launch of Star Wars Outlaws should have been a triumph for Ubisoft, a milestone moment heralding a turnaround in the company's fortunes. But on the financial front, at least, it hasn't really worked out that way. Outlaws has been generally well received by critics, that's the only people, but sales don't appear to be meeting initial expectations. Yeah, because you did not give the fans a game that they wanted. And instead of seeing a surge, Ubisoft's share price has tumbled following the game's release to its lowest mark since 2014. Nolan, do you think that this is something that they should have seen coming?
Well, there were only like 12 different warning signs, so maybe they shouldn't have. But I mean, just look at Star Wars right now. It was clear that there was like, even if you are a fan of some of these, directions they decided to take with this franchise, going after certain types of audiences who may or may not show up, it was pretty obvious that there was a lot of discourse within these fandoms and this community and wikis and all this sort of crazy stuff. So it probably meant, hey, we need to do this thing that a lot of older games used to do, which is this little thing. I don't know if you've heard of it. It's called variety. Do some stuff that appeals to these kind of people and these kind of people, these kind of people. If for crying out loud, remember Sonic Adventure back in the day? I know the game was a bit polarizing, but there's a lot of things since there were so many different kinds of play styles. You could be really fast, you could fly, you could be a robot. There was something a bit in there for everybody. Whether it landed or not is up for debate. But I think they could have benefited from that. But just going all in with these modern audience type sequel trilogy fans, it didn't click. And there's also a lot of sequel trilogy fans who I don't think this game's going to click for them either, because if they were really big on, say, shipping Rey and Kylo, well, this game doesn't have any of that. And I think this game lacks an audience.
Yeah, I think you're right. In fact, that's an observation I think lots of people are probably making, and those of you at home probably are as well. But look, Ubisoft was banking on this game. Star Wars Outlaws is supposed to be the recovery, saying in its most recent financial report, the gameplay previews were not only praised by players and critics alike, but also highlighted the cutting-edge capabilities of our game engines. Now, I'm going to say something to this, Nolan. Have you seen some of those videos of their quote-unquote engine and their cutting-edge capabilities? Because
I saw the speeder bike stuff. Ooh, it was a little rough.
Yeah, I mean, and it's like this whatever they're using is buggier than a Bethesda game release, and I don't think that it's true. I don't think that they're really showing off any of their technology. I think that if anything, this is kind of leading me to believe that they're maybe 10 years behind everybody at this point when it comes to that. But as we progress through fiscal year 25, let's try that again. As we progress through fiscal year 25, all our efforts are focused on successfully launching our promising new releases and positioning them as long-lasting value drivers for Ubisoft while continuing the transformation of our organization. Well, you've already transformed it there, Ives. You've transformed it into a bomb factory, so well done. We are excited about the future and confident in the sustained progress of our turnaround throughout the year. I don't see any indications that they were turning around. They've been in constant descent, but what say you, Nolan Thunder?
Well, I think the writing has been not very good on the wall for Ubisoft for a while. They had a lot of success, back in the day with like on the PlayStation era with like Rayman and all that. They've really built themselves up into a very strong company. I remember the E3 press conferences back when they had was Aisha Taylor hosting. I can't remember her name, but she did a good job and they were really wild, zany. You didn't know what to expect. Now I feel like they've just kind of become a company that seems kind of by the books. They're going to go with whatever the, corporate image is of the modern audience. And I just don't think that's really profitable. And honestly, I don't even think the modern audiences are buying these games. So if you keep doubling down on things that aren't going to work, eventually you run out of ammunition, so to speak, and you don't have any funds left to back these games anymore. And it would be a real tragedy to see Ubisoft go after how they've come so far. But I was never really a huge Ubisoft guy. I mean, I followed them, but a lot of the moves they've been making, especially with the Just Dance not even having the physical game in the case, like I've been kind of annoyed with them lately. And I don't know how the most loyal of Ubisoft fans feel right now, but it can't be for a positive direction because the way they're going right now is the trajectory of the toilet. And in other words, that can mean bankruptcy. So let's hope that doesn't happen.
Yeah, and we're not the only people that are going to mention the word bankruptcy when it comes to Ubisoft because if they end up with three consecutive failures, they're going to be in big, big trouble. Now, all the folks that are in this sphere doing the analysis of it, like J.P. Morgan's Daniel Kervin, he's already kind of stated that this is very sluggish. In fact, he says the game has struggled to meet our sales expectations despite positive critical reviews. Kervin also lowered his sales expectations of Star Wars Outlaws through the end of March 2025 from 7.5 million units to 5.5 million units. And I think that's funny because they were like looking at the projected of 8 million, and I think the expectation more realistically is below 5 at this point in
That
time. And
That's pretty terrifying culture because like we just coming off the heels of Concord, hearing like, big people in the company who are usually in those positions, they're the few people aside from, certain people who got early copies, that were paid for, they're usually going to be like the last ones ever saying anything is wrong. If a company is already saying that this isn't looking good, I'm afraid of Concord type situations because is that going to be like the new standard that every game is compared to whenever a game underperforms? Kind of like how Batgirl became like the face of if something disappoints, will it become a tax write off? Like, it's going to be interesting to see how this is going to affect the gaming landscape in the future. And I really hope they can avoid that kind of fate.
yeah, I think you're right there. And when I look at, again, I'm looking at the same numbers the analyst is, and I'm going to tell you that they are really, you know, undervaluing the performance of great games, and they've been leading or being led into the path of the modern audience, which doesn't exist. So back to the story, though, it says I've been around long enough. This would be Andy himself, the writer, saying that I have a hard time envisioning 5.5 million copies sold as any sort of failure, but such is the way of the world these days. That's correct because of how much games cost to produce. Cyberpunk 2077, by way of comparison, has sold 25 million copies as of October 2023. Well, you need to do a little more research because those numbers have gone up since then, my friend. But more recently, Helldivers 2 surpassed 12 million copies, although they've been flirting with a modern audience and really frustrating their community, which means they're going to lose a bunch of them, and they already have. And while Black Myth Wukong blasted to 10 million unit sales in under a week, actually it was 3 days. Star Wars Outlaws is clearly not a flop, but neither is it running with the big dogs. It's a flop, and this is the one thing that I'm critical of when it comes to a lot of the games journalists and games journalists out there is they just won't say it the way it is. They refuse to take the L on things that they kind of feel like they lean towards politically. You need to remove politics from your game. If you have politics in your game, it's got to be the game's politics, not the real world. And I think that's where the big miss has been. Continuing on, Star Wars Outlaws isn't entirely to blame for Ubisoft's troubles. No, they've been falling downward since early 2021 from a high of €85 or $94 to just €15 or $16 a share. And that's where it sits as of the moment this article was written. I think it's further fallen today, but I could be mistaken. And finally,
Can I
um,
say something real quick before we
of
switch?
course, of course you can.
That's kind of terrifying what you had up there where it says it hasn't been looking good since early 2021. Because I would say that most, correct me if I'm wrong, but I would say most digital type products did very well the year prior because of the situation going on in the world at the time. A lot of people had a lot of time at home, so they were going to buy these sort of things. If Ubisoft sales started going down as early 2021, it didn't even get some time into the next year, to before things really started cooling down. I mean, I could understand if it's like started there, but if it already started plummeting at that point, that's not a good sign for the products you've had for the past 4 years. So you have to start asking if you struggled a bit when you were coming out of that worldwide issue. That's not a good sign. I want to be seeing something that says, like, hey, this became an issue in 2022 or 2023. But early 2021, that's not a good sign at all.
No, I'm with you. I agree 100%. And what's worse is that you also have XDefiant, which they bring up here, and this is courtesy of Twitch Tracker. You can see this is just as of yesterday, the performance of the number of viewers watching the play. People play XDefiant. It's dropped substantially. It is already at a mere 1,440 live viewers. Back in May 20th of 2024, there was 203,000 viewers. That's a substantial drop, and it's showing you that for the summer, this game has done nothing but fall off a cliff. And you can see that reflected here in the chart. Yeah, this is bad news. You also have the same problem that you have at Ubisoft that got them to go into the modern audience direction. It was in 2020 when you saw allegations of widespread misconduct and harassment coming from their leaders. So they ended up with a lot of people resigning. A lot of executives being removed, including Serge Hascoët, Tommy Francois, and Maxime Belland, the managing director. So a lot of people were removed, and Guimont is also kind of been in trouble as well. But he's the head of the company, and they ain't going to move him. So it is what it is, but they played around with a lot of things that they probably shouldn't have, like NFTs and digital ownership of stuff. But
Think
to
about this
return,
this way too. They just had that a few years ago. They had Mario and Rabbids Kingdom Battles, and they got to bank off the Nintendo IP a bit. And that sequel game, it underperformed when it was on the most popular system of this generation. If that game didn't sell well, and I believe the guy who was like one of the more liked figures of Ubisoft, like stepped away from the company sometime after that. Can we get one piece of good news for this company? Like, this is scary territory.
well, and the article kind of wraps it up here, Nolan, saying that whatever the case, it's clear the performance of Star Wars Outlaws isn't going to do much to return Ubisoft to those lofty heights. Assassin's Creed Shadows has the potential to be a major hit, but with no major releases locked in for its 2025 year beyond that, it seems unlikely that Ubisoft bounce back is going to happen anytime soon. And honestly, Nolan, I think that's understating the problem. I think the issue here for Ubisoft is going to be that people are turned off by the modern audience political nonsense and to such a degree that if they even sniff that, if that even makes it onto Cabrutus Rambo's Cabrutus, there's the word, Cabrutus Rambo's list, right? DEI detected, or SBI detected, or any of that. If it makes it onto his list, it's going to have a negative effect on any of these games because people are paying attention now and they're watching videos like this one and looking for news over on that Park Place and finding out just how many of these games are in big trouble. And I'll give you the final word on this, Nolan. I'm going to ask you, do you think Star Wars Outlaws eventually sells over 5 million copies, or do you think it's going to be under 5 million copies at the end of the year?
I would have to say I would guess that it will make it over, But then again, we live in a very weird world right now, and Star Wars viewership has fallen, it plummeted. It's fresh off the heels of the Acolyte. I In the past, I would say the safe bet is totally just say it's going to sell a lot, and the safe bet, it's Star Wars, whether we like it or not, it's going to sell. I just can't say that this time. I have no clue because I cannot believe how much of a cliff these companies, these studios. I mean, for crying out loud, as we were saying earlier, Concord shut down within like 6 days. That's pure insanity from where I came from. So I don't think it's going to make it.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to make it either. And of course, at the time of recording, Concord's gone. You're not going to be able to play it anymore. Sorry about that. But I don't think anybody misses it except for maybe the up to, I don't know, we estimate about 25,000 people who put any kind of money into it. And they were all guaranteed their refund. So at the end of the day, we're talking about a $100 to $200 million loss on a video game. But hey, Ubisoft's not in that boat yet, but they are close to bankruptcy. So I'm going to ask each and every one of you, what do you think will happen with Ubisoft by the end of 2025? Are they headed for some form of reorganization? Are they going to be in a position where they will have to continue to work on games that will have no future? Are they going to recorrect their trajectory and start giving us great games again? And the question is, where is Sands of Time? I don't know. I ask you. Let us know your thoughts down in the comments section below, and let us know what you'd like us to cover because, hey, we're nothing if not malleable. And as always, get your game on.